Right now, the single biggest threat to your financial future is not China, not recession, and certainly not Bitcoin volatility. It is a mandatory line item in the United States federal budget, the national debt. We have blown past the $37 trillion mark. But here is the number that should keep you up at night. For the first time in history, the cost of servicing that debt, just the interest payments alone, has permanently surpassed the cost of our entire national defense. Interest is projected to be the second largest spending category by the end of 2026, exceeded only by Social Security. This mandatory expense is crowding out everything else. This isn't a budget deficit, it's a mathematical collapse. This debt spiral is structurally unavoidable, forecasting a colossal 156% debt-to-GDP ratio by 2055, smashing the record high set during World War II. Repayment is mathematically impossible. This is why macro investor Luke Gromen warned that U.S. debt is the biggest short of our generation. The risk is not that you won't get your money back in nominal terms, but that the purchasing power of those returns will diminish drastically. What once bought a diamond ring will soon only buy cheap trinkets. The conventional options for dealing with debt this colossal are brutal: extreme austerity, politically impossible, or outright default, globally catastrophic. But governments that issue debt in their own currency have a third, more subtle, and historically proven option: inflationary repudiation. This is the endgame, the path of least political resistance. The U.S. government is not waiting for a crisis. They are quietly executing the historical blueprint for a reset. They have done it once before. The question is, how did they manage to liquidate their massive World War II debt without destroying the country? Stick around, because the answer is the key to understanding the crypto plans happening today. The path to a reset requires moving from a debt-based system where debt is repaid at face value to an asset-based system where the debt's value is simply eroded. Historically, periods of extreme indebtedness like the one we face now are resolved not through heroic repayment, but through a policy known as financial repression. Think of financial repression as a deliberate, sneaky wealth transfer from savers to the government. It's a collection of policies designed to keep nominal interest rates artificially low, often below the rate of inflation, resulting in negative real interest rates. This financial repression creates a captive domestic audience, forcing institutions like pension funds and banks to buy and hold government bonds at rates that guarantee a loss of real purchasing power over time. This intentional transfer effectively liquidates the debt. Imagine stuffing £1,000 into a freezer labeled "Trust in Fiat." You come back 30 years later, and while you still nominally have £1,000, inflation has melted away its real value. You were paid back, but you were impoverished. This policy achieves debt repudiation without the political spectacle of a formal default. This is precisely the blueprint the United States used to solve the crisis after World War II. The debt-to-GDP ratio had peaked at 122%. Instead of defaulting, the government imposed financial repression, leveraging capital controls and restrictive domestic regulation to force negative real interest rates. The result was profound. Debt to GDP fell from 122% in 1946 to 66% in 1955. For large stretches between 1945 and 1980, the real rate of return on U.S. Treasury bills was negative. This stealth inflation tax liquidated the real burden of the debt, freeing the U.S. economy. Fast forward to today, we are now structurally compelled to follow the same path because conventional solutions are infeasible. But this time, the weapon is digital, and the infrastructure is being built right now, quietly, behind Wall Street's closed doors. The modern reset isn't happening on analog paper, it's happening through tokenization, transforming debt-based IOUs into asset-based claims on a blockchain. BlackRock CEO Larry Fink defined this shift. Tokenization alongside AI is the two biggest opportunities for the next decade. He explicitly stated that BlackRock is at the beginning of the tokenization of all assets, from equities to bonds. The projections are staggering. Analysts anticipate the tokenized real-world asset (RWA) market will hit $16 trillion by 2030. That represents nearly 10% of global GDP flowing onto digital rails. But this isn't happening on public open blockchains like Ethereum. Institutions perceive those as too transparent and too chaotic for sensitive financial transactions. Instead, titans like Goldman Sachs, BNY Mellon, and Citadel are building and operating a proprietary permissioned DLT network, the Canton Network. This network is already live, housing over $6 trillion in RWA on-chain and processing trillions monthly in real transactions. Tokenization is the necessary infrastructure to manage and enforce the coming digital financial repression, ensuring transparency and efficiency under institutional control. This institutional mandate is now intersecting directly with the highest levels of government policy. In March 2025, President Trump signed an executive order establishing the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, SBR, formally capitalizing it with the U.S. government's current Bitcoin holdings, roughly 198,000 BTC, acquired mostly through criminal forfeitures. This policy was quickly codified by the proposed Bitcoin Act, aiming to acquire 1 million BTC over 5 years. But look closely at the funding mechanism. The proposal suggests converting assets by enforcing the market revaluation of the Federal Reserve's gold certificates, from the outdated statutory price of $42.22 per ounce to the current market price. This isn't organic growth. This is monetary engineering to pay for a strategic asset. It is explicitly designed as a long-term hedge against monetary instability. If the government is so committed to integrating digital assets, why is it simultaneously fighting against its own digital currency? Why did the House pass the Anti-CBDC Surveillance State Act, banning the Fed from ever issuing a retail digital dollar? The answer exposes the ultimate battleground for control. The geopolitical ambition to modernize the dollar conflicts directly with the fear of mass surveillance. Rivals like China are successfully deploying their CBDC, the ECNY, explicitly linking digital transactions to a social credit system. This is the control paradox in America. A government-issued CBDC would grant the central authority complete knowledge of retail account balances, functioning as an Orwellian surveillance tool capable of restricting spending or suppressing politically unpopular activity. This fear has successfully halted the U.S. CBDC project. So, the U.S. has pivoted. Instead of a government-run digital dollar, they are pushing regulated stablecoins like USDC and Tether, mandated by the Genius Act to hold one-to-one USD reserves. This transfers the operational burden to the private sector. But let there be no mistake, this is still a central point of control. Compliance under the Genius Act mandates that regulated stablecoin issuers retain the technical capability to remotely seize, freeze, or burn tokens upon receiving a lawful government order. Your self-custody of a stablecoin is entirely vulnerable to the centralized issuer. The reset is coming, designed to liquidate the national debt through inflation and enforce a new digital financial order built on compliance and control. This brings us back to the verdict, the one asset specifically engineered to reject that control: Bitcoin. Bitcoin stands alone. It is digital scarcity with a fixed supply of 21 million coins. It provides the ultimate financial sovereignty because transfer requires the possession of its private cryptographic keys. Unlike a tokenized asset on the Canton Network, unlike a stablecoin frozen by Circle, confiscation of self-custodied Bitcoin is exceptionally difficult, necessitating severe legal coercion and human compromise. Bitcoin is the decentralized alternative, performing as a critical asymmetric hedge against the inflationary repudiation that our government is structurally compelled to execute. It offers independence from government coercion, making it the highest form of digital financial sovereignty available. The reset is not a future event, it is current policy. The inflation tax is already diminishing your purchasing power. You have two options for defense. First, diversify your store of value. Gold remains your primary first-line safe haven against panic. Bitcoin is your crucial high-beta asymmetric hedge against the inevitable fiat debasement. Allocate accordingly, using a strategy that places a small, meaningful portion of your wealth outside the system.
Second, and most critically, master self-custody. If you leave your digital assets on an exchange or a centralized platform, history confirms you are merely an unsecured creditor, vulnerable to coercion, fraud, and collapse. The collapse of FTX proved this risk. Move your keys to cold storage now. Take control of your own financial future before the system exerts its control over your assets. If you believe in financial freedom, hit the subscribe button. The knowledge war is already won. The battle for sovereignty starts with your keys.